Today I'm going to show you how to sew a simple pencil skirt, but I'm going to jazz it up just a little bit, so stick with me to the end so you can see just how it's done. I'm sure you're going to love it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where I cater to all you sewers who want to learn tips and techniques on how to sew your special garment for any occasion that you want to cherish. I'm Aletha, and if you're new here, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you found me because we are going to learn, create, and have a lot of fun. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to show you how I did my own embellishments on my pencil skirt. But also, I'm going to share some techniques with you on how to make a kick pleat, how to determine negative ease and zero ease, and how to install an invisible waistband. So let's start by gathering everything we need to sew this awesome pencil skirt. For this skirt, I used a stretch knit. This is a ponte knit. I love it because it holds up well and it has a nice recovery. I also used a 1.5 inch soft waistband elastic. I love this elastic because it's super soft but firm. It's perfect for my invisible waistband. And of course, you'll need your tools. So I went ahead and I planned out my design on my Juki sewing machine. It has so many stitches to choose from, so I played around until I decided on just a straight stitch and an eyelet stitch. But of course, you can be as creative as you want. If you know how to embroider, you can do that. You can apply lace, buttons, or even a contrasting zipper. That would be awesome. Whatever embellishment you choose, I would love to see what you come up with, so feel free to post a picture. I'm going to lay out the pattern that I already drafted for this pencil skirt. It already has the zero ease that I want for my design, which is from my waist to just below my hip. Now let's talk about ease for a moment. I'm going to show you on my croquis a little bit about ease. We all know that we add ease to our garment, especially woven, so that it fits well and is comfortable for our body shapes when we move or sit, right? So that would look like this. So if you had a skirt, you would have ease. So you would need to add a couple of inches so that you can feel comfortable. But we subtract ease when we want our garments to have a fitted look or shape our bodies. The more fitted we want, the more ease we subtract. So we go from zero ease to a negative ease. A zero ease would be exactly your body shape. Okay? So we would have, so this would be a zero ease, this would be a negative ease, and this would be adding ease. So again, zero ease is when your final garment measurements are exactly your body measurements. And negative ease is when your final garment measurements is smaller than your body measurements. It's going to fit snugger and tighter to your curves. That's why we need to know how much stretch is in our fabrics. Now figuring that out is very easy. All you need is your measuring tape. Most measuring tapes have inches on one side and centimeters on the other side. You're going to need a sheet of paper, a pencil, and of course, the fabric that you are going to measure. So the first thing you need to do is take your measuring tape and lay it across your paper. for inches, you always start at 4. So we need to start at 4 inches. What we're going to do is every ½ inch all the way up to the number 9, we're going to make a mark, and we're going to number those marks by 10 until we get to 100%. So 4 1/2 would be 10, and then 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then 100%. All right. The next thing you want to do is take your fabric, and you want to use chalk or something to mark your fabric with, and you want to start at the very end of your measuring tape, and you want to make a nice mark so you can see it, and then at the number 4 you're going to make another mark. You're going to hold your fabric nice and firm at the very end, and then you're going to stretch it as far as you can stretch it. This fabric stretches to 30, so I have 30% stretch in this fabric. This is a ponte knit, and as you can see, it recovers very well all the way back to the 4. So this is a great knit to use. I love a ponte knit. Let's try it with a jersey knit. All right, so the same thing that we're going to do, we're going to make sure we start at the very, very end, make a mark, and make a mark at number 4 so we can see it. And then we're going to stretch our fabric as far out as we can. As you can see, this jersey knit stretches way past the 100%. It's very, very lightweight, very flimsy. And another thing to notice about this is that it curls up, but it doesn't recover very well. It's a little bit past the 4. Okay, so that was a jersey knit, and that's how you determine the stretch in your knit fabric. Now you know that the stretch in the fabric is what's going to provide ease and room for movement. It's also important to pay attention to the fabric's recovery, which is how well it bounces back to its original shape. Before I move on, I'd like to invite you to like and subscribe, and then don't forget to hit the bell so that you can be reminded on every time I do a video on tips and techniques on how to create your special garment. All right, so I have my pattern laid down. Now, if you want a plain front at this point, you would lay your front piece on the fold and skip the next part. But in order to provide a backing for my embellishment, I am adding a seam in the front that measures 1 1/4 inches. That's also going to cover up all of my stitches, so it looks neat from the inside. For the back of the skirt, I'm going to measure in 2 inches, and that's going to be the width of my kick pleat. I want my kick pleat to start 10 inches above my hem. I've cut out my pieces. Now notice that I put a notch on the side seam at the hip. Remember to clip your notches. This is going to help you line up your pieces later. I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and attach the back pieces together. But first, I am going to iron on the interfacing. I'm using Fusible Knit Interfacing by Pellom. I'll go ahead and put the description below. Notice that I determined which piece is my bottom pleat, and I marked it with a B. After I apply interfacing to the bottom and to the top pleat, I'm going to finish all of my raw edges with my serger. The next step is to fold up my hem allowance, right side to right side. I'm folding my hem up 1.5 inches. I'm going to come in 1/2 inch and stitch. Now I'm going to turn my hem out to a nice point and press the 1/2 inch that I just created. Now I'm going to do the same thing to my other kick pleat. So here are my 2 back pieces with my 1/2 inch fold. This is my top piece and this is my bottom. I have my 1.5 inch hem fold up on each piece with a nice point, which I'm going to hand stitch later. But for now, I'm going to match my hem perfectly. I'm going to go to the machine and sew a 1/2 inch seam all the way down to my pleat. I'm going to stop 1/2 inch down from the top of the pleat, pivot, and sew to the end. Here is my 1/2 inch seam sewn all the way to the pleat. I made sure to catch the 1/2 inch fold. This is what it looks like. Nice and neat. As I already said, I'm going to hand stitch my hem, which will be the last step. Now I'm going to press my seam open. But first, I will need to clip my corner and then press. The next step is to attach the kick pleat to the skirt. I'm going to use a long stitch length of 4. My longest stitch length is 5, but I'm going to use 4. Keep in mind the top of the kick pleat is diagonal, so I'm going to sew a diagonal stitch right along the top of my pleat from the outside of my skirt. I'm going to put my needle down right in the seam and sew right along the pleat. I'm using a long stitch of 4 because I'm sewing through 3 layers of knit. By using a long stitch, I reduce puckering. The stitch lays nice and flat. Remember to backstitch and pull any threads through to the wrong side. The next step is to sew my side seams together. I'm going to do that by matching my notches and sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to give it a nice press. Now remember, for my embellishments, I left the front of my skirt open, and that was so that I can easily create my design and also hide my stitches from the inside. I pressed my seams in 1.25 inches and measured in about 1/4 inch from the fold of my first stitch. For my first stitch, I used my longest stitch and created a straight line on both fronts. If you are doing this design, use regular polyester thread as your upper thread, your choice of color, but I suggest that your bobbin thread or lower thread should be the same color as your fabric. In my case, my bobbin thread or my lower thread is black for all of my straight stitches. And for my eyelet, I use white for both the upper and lower thread. So now I'm going to move over to my next straight stitch and my eyelets. This is what it looks like. I wanted the space between the lines to be 1/4 inch, but that was too narrow, so I ended up eyeballing it and it came out to be 5/8 inch. My next step is to punch the holes in my eyelets. I'm using a kit that comes with a little apple-shaped wood. I'll put it in the description below. Once all of my holes are punched, I weave my ribbon through the holes and attach them on the inside of the skirt. I'll put the ribbon in the description below as well. We're almost done. The next step is to create a basting stitch and attach the two front pieces together, and I'm creating a 1¼ inch seam allowance. The next step is to sew my final straight stitch. It's going to serve two purposes. It's going to hide all of my threads, and it's going to be my last embellished stitch. I'm going to sew on the front of the skirt, and I want to make sure that I catch the edge of the seam allowance and at the same time get a nice straight stitch. So the best way to do that is to insert my pins exactly where I want my machine needle to enter. I want to make sure that the pins catch the edge of my seam to ensure a straight line every time. The final step is to attach the waistband. As you can see, I added buttons, but I'm not sure if I'll keep them there. I just felt that the ribbon stopped too abruptly. In any case, that's what design's all about. I might change it later. Okay, for the waistband, the first thing you need to do is measure your waist. Then measure out the elastic waistband to the length of your waist measurement. Now measure 2 inches smaller. Cut the elastic waistband 2 inches smaller than your waist measurement. This will give you a nice snug fit. Next, overlap the ends of the elastic waistband about 1/8 inch. Make sure that it's not twisted. Sew a zigzag stitch to attach the elastic waistband together. Sew both sides for strength. Fold your waistband evenly in half so that you can mark 4 even sides of the waistband with chalk. These evenly spaced marks will be your center back or your zigzag, your center front, and side seam placements. Place the elastic waistband on the right side of your skirt. Line up the center back mark, which will be your zigzag, and pin. Now just go all the way around, lining up the marks with the seam. Line up the side seam and pin. Make sure the seams are open. Line up the center front seam and pin. And line up your last side seam, making sure that it's open and pin. Now I'm going to sew a 1/8 inch seam to attach my elastic waistband to my skirt. When you are sewing, you may need to stretch the elastic just a little to even the skirt with the elastic. What makes this waistband technique so awesome is that it's simple. There's not a lot of work, yet it looks clean, neat, and polished. All you need to do is turn your elastic to the inside. You need to roll the seam tight and then give it a nice press from the inside. I suggest you tack your elastic waistband to your seams to keep it down. You're going to do this with just a few tacks on both sides of your seams. Make sure all of the seams, including the front, are tacked. The last step is to hand stitch your hem, and then you're done. Well, that's it for this beautiful embellished pencil skirt. Let me give you a close-up. Well, I love to see what your design looks like, so please post a picture. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.